guys, if I don't want to hear any complaints after that, I didn't pick on you, you're not getting enough face time, you got to volunteer, and you got to let me know also in advance if you want to perform a solo. A couple of guys here responded to the email, and in the email I said if you want to volunteer, email me back. So, who wants to give it a solo shot on the 1 through 5? Adam. Your father asked. You guys take it up at home. This is not family court. You want to give a shot at him? That went down. Excellent. Beautiful. Forgot the last note. That's why you have everyone here to give it to you. All right. And if anyone wants to critique, raise your hand. You know, say what you heard.
So he stopped the note too early?
Correct. He stopped at 2. We got to stop at 1. He got off the train before it stopped moving.
I got confused.
It's first class.
We got a duo?
And last.
No, no,
First and
no,
last.
Let's give him a round of applause. Don't forget applause. Applause makes people feel good, makes them want to come back for more. Want to give a shot, Sully? What'd you guys hear?
The third one seemed coming down. The third one, maybe it was just me, but it seemed a little bit.
We all agree going up was perfect?
Up was great.
That was great. Okay, excellent.
I'll take
Coming down, you
Try
heard
it,
the
sir.
third was a little off?
second.
The second.
I think it started from the third. I think
Okay, what'd you hear in the second? Because I heard something on the second. I heard you went into Nahwan, which means,
I missed the corner part.
which means that if we could open this up here. We're fully technologically hooked up here, people. We don't play games. Okay, so now Sully was coming down, and all was well. Going 5, 4, 3. The 3 was okay. Now on the 2, instead of going 3/4 of a tone, he actually went a half of a tone. How do I know this? Because it sounded to me like Nahwan. It's bad. Nahwan. So you hit the Nahwan. If you want a little more, great job. Someone else. Moshe, you want to do one? Danny, you want to critique?
Critique.
I know what I was asking.
Let's see. There was, you know what? There was something that was off. I just can't put my finger on.
I think he did what I did.
Yeah, same thing.
On the way down.
On the way down, there was a.
Right. So he took Saul and he copied him. He thought what Saul did was perfect. So he did the same thing. No, it's I don't know why, but it seems to be more difficult for some guys coming down than it is going up.
From the fifth.
Well,
Yeah, they do it from the fourth.
They get it from the
hit
fifth,
it on the way
yeah,
down.
We had that problem too when we were going from the fourth, but the second note, that is, you know, why is that the hardest? Because that's not the Western note. You won't find that in Western music, right? Western is only half tones. So we're used to hearing probably more Western music than Arabic music. Thanks. So, so hitting this note on the way down is a challenge, but one way to remember it is, this is also known as which note? This is the first note of which scale? Anyone can tell me? Siga. This is the first note of Siga, and we're going to talk about that a little later. Now, Siga has a very distinct, right? When you're reading the Sefer Torah, Amen. It's almost like it's not here, not there. So if your second note sounds like a Siga, it's the right note. You guys caught that? Okay.
You want to do a back-to-back positions between back-to-back Makam, Bayat, and Makam Nawan, which we can make mistakes on?
Yeah, sure. So Bayat would be Nahwan would be I'll do it from the top, might be a little easier. Okay. I think we've awed ourselves.
5 minutes over.
Yeah, we're good? Okay.
5 minutes over.
Oh, that's. Oh, you didn't see me.
You started off 5 minutes late.
Yeah. Okay. And who did the last one? Moshe? Moshe, you did an excellent vibrato. Did you guys hear the vibrato?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to be confused with bravado. Okay. We'll quickly do some housekeeping. Who's new to the class? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to pass around a paper and a pen. First name, last name, email address in English. Legible, readable. And, okay, for those who haven't been here, there's 2 goals in the class, right? Because there's a lot of moving parts. We have listening, we have singing, we have pizmonim, we have Arabic music. So what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve 2 things that I keep saying over and over again. What is it, Ezra?
To recognize the Makam and sing it.
This is Ezra Cohen. He's 9 years old. David Cohen's son. He's been here from day 1. Goes to Bar Kai, and he understands pretty much everything we're saying.
They didn't hear what he said. Some of the people.
Yeah. So he's saying that the first goal is to recognize the makam. So, and I'm gonna give you right after this little pop quiz like we traditionally do, and you're gonna single out which one is bayat. And it's to recognize it. It's to discern, to distinguish. And the second goal is obviously to sing it, and that's what we're practicing as well. I like to bring a quote. I heard that Bob Marley once said, "One good thing about music, when it hits you, you feel no pain." You know, I come here and it's almost like all the stress of the week, all the problems, they just fall by the wayside. When I hear that music, it's like it throws me into another dimension and all the pain goes away. So throw out the Advil and keep listening to Arabic music. So we said winter vacation, guys are out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a nice winter vacation ourselves in the Makam class. And of course you guys are going to practice while you're on vacation. You sing on the beach, right? Right. In the shower, right?
Israel visit out there, so.
Yeah.
In the car.
But really, it's a good chance to listen. At least when you're on the plane, you're in the car, you're in the hotel, there's nothing doing. Download the music, or have access to the blog. Listen to the songs. Just keep listening over and over again, and keep singing with it. And you know, I like to think of this singing and listening is almost like this understanding. The 2 goals, it's almost like a muscle, right? If you don't exercise it, you're going to lose the muscle. So you constantly have to be listening and singing. I want to just say good work to Avi Haber and Danny Mastery. They pointed out to me something from last class that I was mistaken on. We said in El Meod Na'ala, we said, Ki Moshe ve'Aaron. And I said that when it goes to Yovileni, Yovileni, I said it went back to Nahwan. It actually doesn't. Victor and I spoke about it after the comment, and we agreed that it actually goes back into the Rust Bayat kind of zone, which brings it back to where it was, just going up and down the same way. So, thanks for pointing out the mistake. You get 1 gold star. And just a reminder to post. I think it'll benefit everyone. I know it's the first time I'm saying it, so.
Mike,
Yeah, go ahead.
you said that we could post ourselves singing?
Yeah, is there a way to do that?
No.
No?
I don't think so.
Well, I'll tell you what you can do.
Email it.
Record yourself. There's a little recording device. Everyone has like an iPhone or a Samsung. There's a little memo recording, and record yourself and just email it to me. You know my email address, and I'll post it for you.
If you have Dropbox, you can always easily.
And then you can have everyone critique you. Isn't that fun?
If you have Dropbox,
You can ask Danny Harari to critique
Mike,
you.
if you have Dropbox, it's very easy to record yourself, and then just send everybody, post the link.
Yeah, well,
That's on
I don't want to send through an email.
No, on the blog, just
David
post the
said
link.
you can record it, put it on Dropbox, and
Just
then post the
post the
link
link
on the blog where you can put it on YouTube. That's probably too complicated for some of you. Okay, let me hear. I want to hear from a couple of people. Tell me about your people that have been here from the beginning. Someone just tell me what your experience has been with Bayat. What are we know you're growing in it. I'm hearing it every week. You're able to sing it. You're able to hear it. But tell me what the challenges are. What's bothering you? What have you not been able to get in terms of Bayat? Yeah, go ahead, Ali.
The second jins, I don't know why the second jins goes into Nahwan and not Bayat again. Doesn't make sense to me. Bayat, not Bayat.
So it's a philosophical
Yes,
question.
To add on this question,
Bayat, and,
I'm going to actually answer that later on in the class, but I'll answer you now just quickly. There's actually, this is what makes it a little confusing. I'm going to break it down for you later. The word or the name actually can refer to one of 3 things. One is it could refer to the entire makam or the 8-note scale. The second is it can refer to the jins, which is sometimes the trichord or tetrachord, the 4 notes or 3 notes, right? That comprise the makam. Also, it can refer to the note itself. The notes in the scale have names. So I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4. Guys are using A, B, C, D. And if you talk to musicians, they'll say, play it on Siga, play it on Rust. Rust is actually a term used for,
single note. Really? Wow.
right?
I'm getting more confused.
Now, you can't see it on, C is actually Rust, D is called Bayati or Bayat, E is actually called Siga, Gibka is F, Nawa is G, so they actually have names. So that's why it's important not to get confused, huh?
is that the first note of that scale?
It's the first note of the scale sometimes, other times it's just the name of the note. So, therefore, to answer your question, it's important not to
How you do it always on
what are you trying to do?
the screen so it doesn't shut off.
Oh no, I shut it. What are you looking for?
Oh no, so it doesn't shut off. The sleep, the screen sleep.
Okay. Alright, whatever, I'll put it back. So to answer your question, because Avi, to answer your question, because it's called Bayat as the 8-note scale does not mean that the 2 jins are going to be Bayat and Bayat. It is the case in some makamat, like Rust, which we're going to go. I'm thinking we should go into Rust next because it's the father of makamat. But Rust has Rust and Rust. If you have Bayat and Bayat, it is a makam too, but it's not makam Bayat, it's makam Husseini. Okay? What other challenges you guys had with Bayat?
Just a question, going a little bit off the subject.
I would say, hold on, we're going to have a Q&A,
But I want to focus now, if it's okay, on the bayat. Go ahead, Sam.
So to me, sometimes it's confusing between. I know a lot of people are confusing it here, but just to even when you're listening to know if it's bayat or nahwan. Sometimes if you're singing it straight through, you can know they're doing bayat, but you don't know if they switch to nahwan for a little bit or it's
Sam,
hard
when
to
you're
hear.
listening to the hazan.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we in the first class, the guys are saying like, why are you writing on the board? We want to sing, right? But I was writing on the board because, well, if you remember from the first class, you could look at it on the blog. There are many elements that make up a makam, that comprise a makam, not just the notes that we play. It's not just the notes. It's how we sing the notes, it's
certain
the
signature.
phrasing, the signature, it's the emphasis notes, right? There are certain notes that you emphasize, the way you close it, the way I'm in Hagim. So it may be the exact same scale with a quarter of a tone difference in the whole scale. And if that's what all it was to the makam, you wouldn't be able to discern it. You discern it because there are other elements to it, and those are the elements you have to start picking up on. Okay, Danny.
For me, the challenge is being able to apply what we're doing back into the tefillah. And what I mean is that on the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I hear the discrete notes, and I understand that it's by hand. So now take a word like lemishkinotav, each word's a separate note, and I understand that. But then when you're stretching those notes across a tefillah, where you haven't really gone from the 4 to the 3 until like 7 words later, I find it challenging to keep track of each note and where we are on the scale, and then be able to identify the bayat. When it's closer together, like the 4, 3, 2, 1, I hear it.
That's why it's a very good point. That's why there are pizmonim, if you look through the book. There are pizmonim that, in fact, will be in a totally different makam for literally the entire song, and it'll end in the other makam, and they'll call it that makam. So, what I'm trying to say is, don't worry about throughout. If you're not hearing bayat the way you learn it here throughout the prayer, I wouldn't be too concerned. Look for the endings. Right? So he may say, that part is bayat, but I was doing Ras in the beginning, I could go into Hajaz, I could do whatever I want. So I wouldn't use that as not necessarily an indication. Any other question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the signature, not exactly to Daniel's point, but like being able to tell. Like when we prayed this morning, Maury was praying Hosseini, but it's very difficult for me to tell what's Hosseini, what's Bayat, like.
Right.
Like
so
in the makams that are in the Bayat family, it's difficult to tell when someone's doing the actual Bayat or the close cousin.
Right. So there's fasila, which is family, and there are makamat that fall under a fasila or an umbrella of makam, and bayat is also a fasila, and there are other makamat under the bayat. There's all arguments as to what falls under where, but you can assume that at least for our purposes, we've spoken about bayat. Obviously, is the head of the family, and then you have Hosseini, and you have Muhayya, which is the higher octave. Let's hold the rest of the questions for the Q&A at the end. And let me give you a little pop quiz. You guys like pop quiz? I'm actually going to do this in not the whole scale. I'm going to sing just the 4 notes, the lower jints of each of these 3 makamat. And I want you to pick out bayat, and I'm doing it just the 4 to make a point. First one. Layli ya, layli ya, layli ya, layli ya, layli ya, layli ya, layli. Second one. Layli ya, layli ya, layli. Third one. Thank you. Third one. applause? So, Ezra. Ezra just called it out. First one. Is he right?
Yes.
He's right. Which one? He said number one. Right? You guys all got that? Yeah. Anyone wasn't sure about that? Look at that. 100% of you just nailed it. 100%. Unbelievable. You didn't get it?
No,
Which one did you think?
I didn't think you did it at all. I thought it was.
You thought I was like
Yeah.
Trick question.
sketching you guys, huh? What did you think the first one was?
I couldn't put my finger on it.
Oh yeah.
Now I know.
It might be because you hit some of the higher notes, and we're mainly focusing on the bottom five.
Possible. What'd you guys hear? Second one. Hajaz. Was that clear or vague? Okay. And third one? Saba. Again, Ezra hit it right in the head. Saba. Now, what's interesting is I picked the bottom four to show you that you don't need a whole scale to make the maqam distinguishable. You just need to hit the notes within that four, and you need to do it in a certain closing style. We spoke last time about Hajaz and why Hajaz is so memorable. Hajaz seems to be like the one that you really perk up to when you hear it.
So it's the tail of the, in the saw, it's the tail that makes the, is that really what?
It's not just the tail, isn't it? Just like the whole.
It's not just the
way
tail,
it's pitched.
Primarily?
It's a lot of things, but like I was telling Danny, the way you close is the way you identify it. In other words, you can go off into different maqamat in the meantime. But what I wanted to point out with Hajaz was this. If you notice, that 1.5, that's the biggest jump that you're going to see in any maqam, in any tetrachord, trichord. On anything, because you can have, Hajaz could be actually on the top four as well, like in maqam Bayat Shuri, you have Hajaz on the top, and we call it the shirt, and then the pants would be Bayat. So that that's the F sharp to the E flat, that's the 1.5. Now, did I put sub on here? I thought I put it. Now Saba also has that. Saba also has the 1.5 jump, but it has something else in it. Saba has the 1.5, and then it has a half. So it goes really big, then really small. That's why it has that distinct, almost like that DNA pattern that we all recognize. Okay. Yeah, you guys really put me to the test here. Yeah. 4 and 5. And then 3 and 4 would be the small one. Yeah. Okay. Just a little interesting history tidbit that I found. We said Bayat Shuri would be if you have Hajaz over here, and then you have Bayat on the bottom, right? I read that Shur is actually Farsi for Moshe.
Sour?
What?
Sure means sour.
Sour?
Shurba.
No, this is not.
That's a soup.
Yeah, that's a soup.
Sure.
Different dialect.
No,
The
any other word for shur?
That's
That's what they call shur. Sour?
The sure.
Do you guys find this makam sour? No, actually, I don't know. Maybe it's wrong. I read that shur is passion. Did that ring a bell? No. Maybe they made that up. It sounds good because. It's a pretty passionate makam. All right. what happens when you have multicultural class. You got Persians, you can't fool them. You can't sketch them. Next time I'll pick one in German or something. Okay. Now, for the fun part. We're going head first. We're going 1 through 8. You guys ready? We're going Bayat 1 through 8. Now.
Actually, in Farsi it is, according to Google Translate, it's also shur.
It's also what?
Passion in Persian is shur.
So you guys have to brush up on your language. Okay. Now, I'm going to challenge you guys. I'm going to say, you don't even have to learn this. You already know this. How do we know this? I'll tell you how you know it. Because we spoke in week 1 about a term called an octave. Oct is 8, an octagon. Octave is a distance of 8 notes. Now, it's actually 6 whole tones, but it's 8 notes, generally in the scales. Now, if you notice here, there's one letter that repeats itself. D. That means that this D is the same as this D, except they're an octave apart. Now, I'm going to sing the low one. I heard someone humming it, so I'm going to sing. Now someone sing the high one. That's it. That's note 8. So if you ever get stuck and you're like, what's that high one? Just go to the first one and go up an octave. It's a trick.
Sounds great.
Right? The 7th one is the same as the one below the first one. So if we're going
Hit the button.
1 is the same as 8,
D.
right? 0 or -1 is the same as 7. I got it. Oh, that's what you were doing 7 before. Where's 7? Yeah. Oh, okay. Now it makes sense. This thing is going to sleep, so we gotta keep it awake. Okay. Now, this is the only note that we haven't touched yet. So in essence, all we're doing is one note. Because you know these two. But obviously we have to put it all together. This B flat is actually the first note of Ajam. Who said that?
Bernie.
Bernie. Where have you been?
On the blog.
Ajam. So, this is a trick, right? You think all these Hazanim, they just go and they do this thing, and everyone's like, how do they do it? There's a system. They have cheat sheets. They're not special. So if you want to go into Ajam, and you're here, in
They are special.
We'll take that. So if you were saying Gila Maya Melcha Moshel Bakoim Ve'alu Moshe'im Arzion Ishbod Dar Isa Ve'itan Adonai Amelcha Ve'alai Nevelech Magol Haaretz V'yom Ha'u Yelech Echad U'shmo Echad. So you heard how I went up to the bees, the ajam. Okay. So what we're gonna do is
No.
we're gonna go like this. Yeah.
So, if you go the full 8, you're bayat all the way through.
Yeah.
You're saying if you stop on 6 and start playing around in that area without changing any of the notes around your ajam, as long as you don't go down too
Yep.
far, how does it work?
Ajam is
What's the space between the ajam?
right, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. There's one and one. One whole note, one whole note.
And what about below it? Below the B?
Also the same.
Below the B. Yeah, it would be a continuation.
So an ajam, what's the space?
So ajam is known sometimes as a trichord, which is 3 notes, sometimes as a tetrachord, which is 4 notes. Depends on who you're asking or what makam you're playing. But in this case, anytime you see one and one whole note and one whole note, almost like if you went on the piano from C to D to E, or on the guitar, who here plays piano or guitar? Right. So if you go from C to D to E, you have one whole note from C to D and one whole note from D to E. That makes an ajam. So anywhere I play one and one, this is the DNA. This is what makes the jins, it makes the makam.
So F, G, and A also?
We'll get that in a minute.
If you
But
go
now,
higher
for
than
now,
D,
F, G, and A also?
yes,
Yes,
F, G, and A. I'm going to talk about that too. There's a second ajam in the scale, F, G, and A. La la lam, la 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 lam, la 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 lam.
Right, so if you're playing an ajam now, you're up high. So now you're gonna have to, if you're gonna go higher than the D, it has to be natural. So then you're gonna get lost.
Well, you can go lower also, Dave, because you can go below the D.
I know you
and
could.
have
It's
the same-
almost like you're.
You could,
You
but if you want to go up, now you're changing a note. Now
You
have
ever
to
see
change a
like
note.
you're on the Garden State Parkway and you gotta get.
Quarter shots.
I think I've never been to Lakewood. You gotta get to
Go back
Lakewood.
down though.
There's like 4
Get to that
exits
spot.
that say
Lakewood,
Lakewood.
Lakewood, right.
There's
We
Lakewood
just say you
A,
don't have to
Lakewood
change
B,
any
Lakewood
notes.
C. So you have ajam on F, you have ajam on
Right,
flat.
to that, to
Okay,
those,
let's
those
let's
three.
not go off topic. We're gonna get to this in a minute. There's plenty of time. We're gonna sing.
Doing a full switch.
I know. I want to get to that. Stay with me here. Okay. We're gonna sing 1 through 4 back to 1. Then we're gonna go 1 to 5 back to 1. Same for 6, 7, and 8. Okay. So let me do. Okay, let's do 1 through 4. beautiful you sounded. I promise you, you guys sound like you've been doing this for 100 years.
Check it out on the
Amazing,
board.
amazing, huh?
Check it out on the board.
You guys can see yourself. Who doesn't want to see themselves? Okay. Now we're going to jump into Pizmon. Don't worry, we're going to go right back to this after we're done with Pizmon. The Pizmon is going to highlight these notes, and our soloists today are going to demonstrate these notes in the Pizmon through a improvisation, if they did their homework. Okay, turn to page 246. You guys have definitely heard of this.
246. No, I should sing now.
Now,
Yeah, now we can do it easy.
alright, if any of you haven't heard of Mao Z, there's another class next door. Now Mao Z starts on where? That's also known as which note? The
Hosseini.
Hosseini note.
Mike, it was saying that the B, when the G is the flat, the one after the A, it's different.
So we're not talking about the scale, we're talking about the note. Okay. Now, now when I hold up my hand, I want you to stop because I want to make a point. So let's start. Mao Z. We're going to do 3 solos on this note and 3 solos on this note. Now, when I say solo on this note, what does it mean? Because a solo is not one note. But we're going to start to learn how to keep circling around one note. Because no one likes to hear 10 notes at once. People like to hear the simple repetition of a note. So,
Okay. You gotta put on the airplane, Gary.
No, he's on 4G. He's not on Wi-Fi.
That's alright, that's pretty neat.
Not on Wi-Fi.
That's a good ring.
He's on Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi. Well,
That's a great name for your phone.
oh,
Artie, you could edit yours.
Listen, now everybody on the blog could now see that guy's number.
class.
You're on airplane mode. Oh no, airplane mode.
You can't get on to the blog.
Okay. Gary will be privileged to know. Okay. So, our first. Oh, look who it is. Avi Haber.
Whoa!
Come on up, Avi. Yeah. Go up. Turn the camera around. Now, wait, hold on.
Now hold on, here's what I'm gonna do for you guys.
Only Haber here.
Now watch.
Only Haber here.
Now, watch what I'm gonna do.
Record him?
Well, it's not in the right key, but.
Oh, Hadid, it's doing everything.
Take it, yeah.
From note 6?
Note 5. Let me just open this up again. So, now we're gonna sing that one part again, and he's gonna take it and run with it. You can go as long as you want, go for 20, 30 seconds, no problem. Na 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 موزينا حلقفني قيتن سعد عاشوري بهارك بترى سعد عاشوري بهارك Danny, you're gonna have to top that.
I'm gonna stick to the fifth note.
Well, he cheated. He didn't really stick to the fifth note. He was going to like 15th note.
Good.
Kills it.
Top notch. David, you with me?
Yeah, I'll be with you.
Sure.
What's his glass over?
موزي يا زيارة دمعي موزي موزي موزي
Unbelievable. Very good. Hazanim is shaking. Their jobs are at risk.
It's all the teaching.
Now we're going to go into the seventh note.
Take David, I believe take it.
That's the C. What's the David? So David's gonna hit the higher one on the seventh. He's gonna try. So let's give him a
دمعي على الدمام على الدمام
Aaron, you ready?
Michael, what did he go into at the end?
What are you going to ask him?
What did he go into at the end?
Maybe Michael could tell you. I don't know. I thought it was in.
It sounded good to me. It
I
sounded
thought
right.
it was right. The last couple of notes, just those 10 notes.
Whatever it was
Beautiful,
intentional. It was
beautiful.
intentional. I promise you.
Totally on purpose.
Let's give Aaron Silvers an Remy, did you get the email?
What?
He got the email! He didn't respond just in case I wasn't sure.
He's not denying it.
Right, not denying it. It's very hard to stay on the same key and the same note. And what these guys have done is incredibly, incredibly difficult. Another round of applause for everyone. Now, when I say stay on the one note, like your example would be just keep going around it, and then eventually, you come down. Excellent, excellent. Okay. All right. I want to just do quickly. I told you guys I would. Okay, so this is Makam Bayat. We're going to talk about the back roads of the inroads of Bayat and how we get from one to the other. I'm scrolling here, so I'm going to have to shuffle back and forth a little bit. This is traditional Makam Bayat. Someone said, how come Bayat doesn't have Bayat and Bayat? Because it doesn't. I don't know why. Jin's Bayat is the lower four. Jin's Nahwand is the next four. It's not divided equally, because this is what we said last time. This is a conjunct Makam where the two jints overlap on the same note, that same G, right? And there are others that are disjunct, like Rast, where you have Rast from 1 through 4, and then it skips 1, and then 5 through 8 would be the next Rast, for example. So this is what we've been doing. Beneath it you can see the tones that make up that Makam. Now, I haven't yet decided definitively, but I'm 90% sure that we're going into Rast after we're done with Bayat. I'm not sure if we're going to continue Bayat after the break or if we're going to go to Rast, but what's interesting is we said that the placement of a Makam, meaning not only the intervals or the tones, but also where on the spectrum they fall. Do they fall on C, D, E? How high or low are they on an instrument or on your voice, right? There are actually makamat, like Nahwand, for example, is played on C. If you play Nahwand down on G, it's called something else completely. It's called Farah Faza. So
even if it's the same spacing?
Even if it's the same spacing. Now, that being said, let's look at Bayat. This is Bayat on the bottom. Actually, if you scroll. Now, Bayat goes from D to D. If you take notes 1 through 7 in Bayat, you put them right here on top. You just add the 1C on the bottom, and you cut off the D on the top. Right? You take the core of it, and you just put it right there. It's literally this, pretty much the same notes, and you end up with Makam Rust, with the exception of one note, which we'll learn. That note, we actually learned it already in the last class, right? Yovineni, right? Yovineni. That B flat becomes a B half flat, which means that the jump over here is 3/4 instead of a half, right? Now, what we're basically saying, like what you need to take away from this, we'll do all this when we get to Rust. What you need to take away from this is, Rust is in essence a continuation, or you should say Bayat is a continuation of Rust. So if you want to get to Rust from Bayat,